Before we start, take a moment right now and hit that subscribe button. You won't regret it. These are the stories people never wanted you to hear. Stories buried deep in shame and regret. And if you stay until the very end, you'll discover the confession that will change how you see the world forever. Some secrets should never be spoken out loud. Some truths are too heavy to carry alone. But tonight, you're going to hear them anyway. These are real confessions from real people, posted anonymously on Reddit in moments of desperation when the weight of their secrets became too much to bear. Each story you're about to hear represents a life forever changed by a single decision, a moment of weakness, a choice that cannot be undone. This is not entertainment. This is raw human experience stripped down to its most vulnerable core. And I promise you, by the time we reach the end, you'll understand why some people spend their entire lives running from the truth. Let's begin. There was a man once who thought he had everything figured out. 10 years of marriage, 2 beautiful children, a wife who stood by him through military service, through injury, through the darkest depression that followed his discharge from the army. He had broken his back, literally, during his tour. 2 vertebrae shattered, nerve damage that would never fully heal. The army discharged him and sent him home to rebuild a life he no longer recognized. For 2 years after his return, he drowned himself in alcohol. He had no job, no money, no purpose. He was a ghost living in his own skin, waiting for something to pull him back to the world of the living. That's when he found them. A group of modern hippies, Wiccans, alternative lifestyle enthusiasts. People who didn't judge him for his brokenness. They welcomed him in, and slowly he started to feel human again. There was one woman in the group who hated him at first. She thought he was too polite, too nice, too fake. She couldn't stand to be around him. But time has a way of changing things. Months passed. He got a job. He got his own place. And that woman who despised him, she became his friend. Then she became more than that. They started sleeping together. Nothing serious at first, just physical. Just 2 broken people finding temporary comfort in each other's bodies. But then his job disappeared again. The money ran out. He had nowhere to go. So she asked him to move in with her. And he did. Why not? They were already sharing a bed. Might as well share an apartment too. One night, he came home to find her crying on the couch. He asked what was wrong. She said she was in love with him. He didn't know what to say. He wasn't sure if he felt the same way, but he couldn't just leave her there in tears. So he said it back. I love you too. 3 words that would seal his fate forever. 3 years later, they were married. But those years were anything but happy. Financial stress crushed them. On and off jobs. Constant fighting. She started saying vicious things to him. Cruel words designed to hurt, to provoke, to push him to the edge. He felt like she was trying to goad him into hitting her. He never did, but he wanted to leave. He was planning to leave. And then she told him she was pregnant. His heart sank. All his plans evaporated in an instant. He couldn't abandon her now, not with his child growing inside her. So he stayed. He did what he thought was the right thing. They bought a house. He started a business. Their son was born, healthy and beautiful. For a brief moment, life felt good again. He even went back to school, taking classes at the local college. He loved her older son like his own. He convinced himself that maybe, just maybe, they could make this work. But the universe has a dark sense of humor. He met someone online, in a video game of all places. A role-playing game where people create fantasy versions of themselves and live out stories that have nothing to do with their real lives. He and this other player started talking, first in character, then out of character. They talked for hours every day, 3 hours, 4 hours, sometimes longer on weekends, and he started feeling something he hadn't felt in years. Something light and electric and terrifying. He didn't know what to do with those feelings. He had no framework for understanding them. He thought he was having heart attacks, small fluttering sensations in his chest that made him panic. But it wasn't his heart failing. It was his heart waking up. His mood changed. He became happy. He started listening to music again, dancing, going out. And his wife noticed. She told him his happiness made her skin crawl. For 2 weeks, they fought constantly, every single day. The same fight over and over. Why are you so happy? What's wrong with you? Then the woman from the game asked to meet him in person. He drove 3 hours to her family's ranch. They had dinner. They walked in the woods. Everything felt peaceful for the first time in years. That night, they lay down together on a futon. One thing led to another, and he had the best weekend of his life. When he drove home, his phone exploded with messages. His wife had sent his belongings to his mother's house. She was kicking him out. And you know what he felt? Nothing. Just a shrug. He realized he didn't care anymore. The woman he had committed to, the mother of his child, the person he had sacrificed everything for, had become a stranger to him. Worse than a stranger, an enemy. His wife went out that night. When she came back, she told him she had hooked up with another man. Then she did it again. And again. 2 more men in 2 more nights. She wanted to hurt him. She wanted him to feel the betrayal she felt, but he was already gone. Emotionally, mentally, spiritually. He was done. He moved 400 miles away, saved up money doing terrible jobs, lived in a 1-room apartment, the kind where the bedroom and kitchen and living room are all the same space. The woman from the game left her husband for him. Her parents hated him. They blamed him for destroying their daughter's marriage. But he didn't care, because for the first time in his adult life, he was genuinely happy. 3 years later, they were married. They had another child on the way. He had a good job in tech. They owned a home. His relationship with his ex-wife had become amicable. He saw his kids regularly. Everything had worked out. Against all odds, his life had become something worth living. So what's the moral of this story? That cheating is okay? That abandoning your family leads to happiness? No. The moral is far more complicated than that. This man destroyed lives to save his own. His first wife, his children, the woman's husband, their families. All of them were collateral damage in his pursuit of happiness. And he knows it. He carries that weight every single day. But he also knows that if he had stayed in that marriage, if he had continued living a lie, he would have died inside. Maybe literally. Maybe he would have driven to a bridge one night and never come home. Maybe his children would have grown up with a father who was physically present but emotionally dead. A hollow shell going through the motions of life without ever actually living. He made a choice, a selfish choice, a destructive choice, but also a choice that saved him. And now he lives with the consequences. The guilt, the judgment, the knowledge that his happiness came at the expense of others. That's his confession. That's his burden. And he'll carry it for the rest of his life. If you're still watching, I need you to do something for me right now. Hit that like button. Share this video, because the next confession is even darker, and you're going to need to prepare yourself. Let me tell you about a surgeon. A young surgeon, younger than most of his colleagues. He pushed himself through medical school as fast as humanly possible, finished his residency in record time. Now, he's in a fellowship, operating on patients whose lives depend on his skill, his precision, his ability to make split-second decisions under unimaginable pressure. People look at him and see confidence. They see talent. They see a brilliant young doctor with a bright future ahead of him. But what they don't see is the terror that lives inside him every single day. The constant awareness that he is less experienced than the people around him. The fear that one day his luck will run out and someone will die because of his inadequacy. Earlier this week, that fear became reality. The patient was a baby girl, premature, barely 2 weeks old. She had been born with a severe congenital heart defect. Without immediate surgery, she would die. Her parents knew this. The medical team knew this. And the young surgeon knew this. But here's the thing. This particular surgery is rare. He had only watched it performed once before, just once. And now his attending physician had decided it was his turn to lead the operation. As he scrubbed in, his heart was already pounding. This wasn't like the adult surgeries he had performed before. This was different. This baby's entire chest was smaller than his hand. Her heart was the size of a walnut. Every single movement had to be precise. There was no margin for error. None. At first, everything went according to plan. He opened her chest carefully. He exposed the tiny structures that needed to be repaired. He assessed the situation just like he had been taught, step by step, methodically. For a brief moment, he allowed himself to believe he could do this. Then came the cannulation of the aorta. It's a procedure he had done many times on adult patients. You make a small incision, insert the cannula, tighten the purse string sutures. Simple in theory, but this wasn't an adult heart. This was a newborn. As soon as he made the incision, blood spurted out. The aorta was so small, the tissue so fragile, that everything happened faster than his hands could react. He inserted the cannula, but when he tightened the sutures, they tore right through the delicate tissue. Blood everywhere. He tried to clamp. He tried to suction. He tried to control the hemorrhage, but it was too late. With adult patients, you sometimes have a few seconds to correct a mistake. With this baby, every second was critical, and too many seconds had already passed. She had lost too much blood. Her tiny body couldn't compensate, and she died on that operating table. He stood there, numb, staring at her lifeless form. The attending physician took over immediately, trying everything possible to revive her, but it was over. The surgery that was supposed to save her life had ended it instead. And it was his fault. His hands, his inexperience, his failure. Afterward, they debriefed. The attending tried to console him, telling him that these things happen, that the surgery was always high risk, that even experienced surgeons have lost patients in similar circumstances. But none of that mattered, because that baby girl was dead. And he was the reason why. The hardest part came when he had to face her parents. They were waiting outside the operating room, eyes full of desperate hope. and he had to look them in the face and tell them their daughter was gone. He tried to explain what happened in clinical terms, tried to make it sound like an unavoidable complication, but the truth was eating him alive. He had killed their baby, his hands, his mistake. Their child was dead because he wasn't good enough. That mother's scream will haunt him for the rest of his life. That father's silent collapse into a chair, head in his hands, body shaking with grief. That image is burned into his brain forever, and he knows with absolute certainty that no amount of future success will ever erase it. He will perform hundreds, maybe thousands of surgeries in his career. He will save countless lives, but he will never forget the life he took. That's his confession. He's a surgeon who killed a baby, and he has to wake up every morning and live with that knowledge. He has to look at himself in the mirror and see a murderer in a white coat. Because that's what he is, isn't it? He took a life. It doesn't matter that it was an accident. It doesn't matter that he was trying to save her. She's dead. And he's the reason. The medical community will call it a tragic complication. His colleagues will tell him to move on, to learn from the experience, to become a better surgeon because of it. But how do you move on from killing a baby? How do you learn from that? How do you become better when the cost of your education was an innocent life? He doesn't have answers to those questions. All he has is guilt, an ocean of guilt that threatens to drown him every single day, and the knowledge that somewhere out there, two parents are living in hell because of him. Their daughter's first and last surgery, her entire life reduced to a failed medical procedure, a statistic, a case study, a lesson for future surgeons to learn from. That's what she became, because of him. If you've made it this far, I need you to do me a favor. Comment below and tell me what you would do in his situation. Would you quit medicine? Would you continue operating, knowing you're capable of making fatal mistakes? Would you be able to live with yourself? Tell me in the comments. And make sure you're subscribed, because we're only halfway through, and the confessions get so much worse from here. Let me take you to a different kind of nightmare now. A nightmare that doesn't happen in an operating room. A nightmare that happens in the place you're supposed to feel safest, your own home. There was a couple once, graduate students trying to make ends meet in an expensive city. They found a cheap apartment in a rough neighborhood. It wasn't ideal, but it was all they could afford. The building was old and run down, but most of the neighbors seemed decent enough, except for the three guys who lived in the apartment right next door. At first, it didn't seem like a big deal. 3 roommates, nothing unusual about that. But then one of them moved out suddenly, then another, and the one who remained started to unravel. Power struggles, arguments, police showing up regularly. The neighbors tried to stay out of it, tried to mind their own business. But when that last roommate was left alone in the apartment, things went from bad to unlivable. Every single weekend, parties until 6 in the morning. Music blasting through the walls so loud it felt like the building was shaking. People coming and going at all hours. Neighbors calling the police constantly. Drug searches, chaos. And this couple, trying to study for their degrees, trying to build a future, trapped in the middle of it all. The neighbor was polite at first. If they asked him to turn down the music, he usually would. He even invited them over a few times, showed them his drug collection like he was proud of it, offered to throw bottles off his balcony for fun. They had to talk him out of it. But things changed when he lost his job. That's when the music went from a weekend problem to an all-day, everyday nightmare. The wife was trying to study at home, trying to focus on dense textbooks and write papers while the bass shook the walls. She couldn't think, couldn't concentrate, couldn't work, and no matter how many times they knocked on his door, begged him to turn it down, nothing changed. He didn't care. He had nothing left to lose. So the husband got creative. He works in IT, and he knows his way around technology. He noticed that their neighbor's Wi-Fi router was visible from their apartment, and he had an idea. What if he could make the neighbor think his internet was broken? What if he could drive him just crazy enough to implode? He started jamming the Wi-Fi signal, not all the time, just enough to be noticeable. A few minutes here and there, random disconnections that couldn't be explained, and it worked. The neighbor started getting paranoid. He called his internet provider. They sent technicians. They replaced his router. But the problem kept happening because the husband kept doing it. Then one day, the neighbor completely lost it. He started pounding on walls, screaming about conspiracies, accusing people of hacking him. The police were called. Multiple officers showed up. And when they tried to talk to him, when they asked for his name, their entire demeanor changed. Oh, him. Turns out this guy had a history, a violent history. They didn't just arrest him. They took him to the hospital on a psychiatric hold. When he got out a few days later, he actually knocked on the couple's door and apologized. But he wasn't alone. Standing behind him was a big man in a leather jacket, his probation officer. The message was clear. He was being watched now. One more incident, and he'd be gone for good. A few weeks later, he moved out, and the building was finally quiet again. The couple never told him they were the ones messing with his Wi-Fi, never told him they were directly responsible for his breakdown, for his hospitalization, for everything that followed. They kept that secret to themselves because part of them felt guilty. Part of them wondered if they had gone too far, but another part of them felt justified. This man had made their lives hell. He had parties until dawn. He threw bottles off balconies. He got into physical fights with other neighbors. He deserved what happened to him, didn't he? That's the question that keeps them up at night. Did he deserve it? Or did they cross a line? They manipulated someone with mental health issues. They pushed him into a psychological crisis. They weaponized technology against a vulnerable person and then watched as he fell apart. Yes, he was a terrible neighbor. Yes, he made their lives miserable. But does that justify what they did? They don't have an answer, and they probably never will. All they know is that they drove a man to a psychiatric hospital and they got away with it. And they've never told anyone until now. Subscribe if you haven't already, because the next confession is about a mother who failed to protect her daughter. And it will break your heart. Mothers are supposed to protect their children. That's the most fundamental rule of parenthood. You keep your kids safe. You stand between them and danger. You would die for them if you had to. But what happens when you fail? What happens when you make a choice that you think is right and it destroys your child's life forever? This is the confession of a mother whose daughter will never forgive her, and she doesn't blame her for it. It started decades ago. The mother was married with 2 young daughters. One day, something happened, something terrible. Her husband hurt their younger daughter. We don't know exactly what he did. The mother doesn't specify in her confession. But whatever it was bad enough that she left him, took her daughters, and walked away from the marriage. She was going back to school at the time, pursuing a master's degree. She had no job, no income, no way to support herself and 2 children on her own. And her ex-husband, the man who had hurt their daughter, swore it would never happen again. He cried, he begged, he promised he had changed. And the doctors, the therapists, the professionals who examined the situation told her the daughter would be fine. Kids are resilient, they said. She'll recover. So the mother made a choice. She went back to him. She chose to believe that her children would be better off with a father figure, even a flawed one, than growing up without a dad at all. She chose to believe that one terrible incident didn't define who he was. She chose to trust that it would never happen again. And for years, it seemed like she had made the right decision. They went on to have another child together. The family seemed normal on the surface, but underneath, something was rotting. Something dark and poisonous that no one wanted to acknowledge. The younger daughter, the one who had been hurt, started pulling away. As she grew older, she became more and more distant from her parents, more independent, almost aggressively so. She didn't want their help, didn't want their money, didn't want anything to do with them. And the mother couldn't understand why. She thought maybe it was just teenage rebellion, just a phase that would pass. But it didn't pass. When the daughter turned 18, she cut them off completely, changed her phone number, sold the car they had given her and sent them the money, changed banks, got off their health insurance, refused to tell them her new address. She erased them from her life as thoroughly as humanly possible. The only connection left was through her older sister. The mother would ask how her younger daughter was doing, and the older sister would pass along information. But she hated being in the middle, hated keeping secrets, hated watching her family fall apart. Years passed. The mother kept hoping her daughter would reach out, kept praying she would call. But the call never came. And eventually, the mother realized the truth. Her daughter was never going to forgive her, because the mother had failed her. She had chosen her husband over her child. She had believed the doctors instead of her instincts. She had let a man who hurt her daughter back into their lives. And that decision had destroyed any chance of a relationship with her daughter forever. Now, the mother tortures herself looking at baby pictures. Pictures of a smiling little girl who trusted her completely. A little girl who believed her mother would always keep her safe. And the mother knows she failed that little girl. She failed in the most fundamental way a parent can fail. She didn't protect her. She goes to church now for the first time since childhood. She prays every day that her daughter will call. But deep down, she knows the call will never come, because some betrayals are too deep to forgive. Some wounds never heal, and some choices destroy relationships forever. That's her confession. She chose wrong, and she has to live with that choice for the rest of her life. Her daughter is out there somewhere, living a life the mother knows nothing about. And the mother will die one day never having made peace with her, never having the chance to explain, never having the opportunity to say, "I'm sorry," in a way that matters. That's the cost of her decision. That's the price she pays every single day. and she knows she deserves it. We're past the halfway point now, and if you're still here, you need to like this video. You need to share it, because what comes next is going to challenge everything you think you know about morality and redemption. Let me tell you about a man who preyed on vulnerable young women, a man who used drugs and manipulation to control them, a man who turned teenagers into prostitutes and convinced himself he was helping them. This is one of the darkest confessions you will ever hear, and it's real. He was in his 20s, fresh out of the army with a back injury that left him disabled and depressed. He was drinking heavily, doing drugs, barely functioning. And then he met a group of teenage girls. They were young, damaged, looking for someone to tell them what to do. And he saw an opportunity. He started small, gave them drugs, made them feel special, made them feel like he cared about them. And then he started having sex with them, one after another. Sometimes multiple girls in the same week. They were all underage, all vulnerable, all desperate for attention and affection. And he exploited that desperation without a shred of guilt. But it didn't stop there. He started pimping them out, convinced them to have sex with other men for money, convinced them it was empowering, that they were taking control of their own sexuality. And they believed him. Because he was older, because he seemed confident, because they had no one else. He called them his girls. He was proud of them, proud of himself. He thought he was doing something good, helping these lost teenagers find their way in the world. But he wasn't helping them. He was destroying them. He was a predator, a monster, a man who took broken children and broke them further. It went on for years. He introduced one of his girls, a 14-year-old runaway, to his younger sister. And his sister, desperate for his approval, joined his stable too. She started using drugs, started having sex for money, and he convinced himself this was fine. This was normal. This was just how things were. Then one night, everything fell apart. He brought one of his girls, a redhead named Mary, to meet a dealer friend. The dealer said he knew someone who would pay good money for time with her. So they went. And when they arrived at the house, 3 men were waiting. Men with flashlights in an abandoned building with no power. Mary tried to warn him something was wrong, but he didn't listen. The men attacked him, beat him unconscious, broke his ribs, punctured his lung, gave him a concussion so severe they had to drill a hole in his skull. And while he was unconscious, they raped Mary, violently, beat her until her face was unrecognizable. He woke up in the hospital days later. The police asked him questions, and that's when they told him what had happened to Mary. That's when he saw the pictures of her face, swollen and bruised. And for the first time in years, he felt something: guilt, shame, the realization that he had done this to her. Not directly, but he had put her in that situation. He had brought her to that house. He was responsible. His sister got arrested for possession and solicitation, sent to drug treatment, and he realized the damage he had done to her too. She had a string of abusive boyfriends after that, because he, her big brother, had taught her that men only want women for sex. He had destroyed her ability to have healthy relationships, and he knew it was his fault. He got clean after that. 5 years sober now, but Mary never recovered. Last he heard, she's still using, still broken. And the other girls, the ones whose names he can barely remember, are scattered to the wind. He has no idea what happened to them, no idea if they got clean or if they're dead. And he's too much of a coward to find out. That's his confession. He was a predator who destroyed young women's lives and convinced himself he was helping them. He was a sex trafficker who called it empowerment. He was a rapist who never physically forced anyone because he didn't have to. He manipulated them so thoroughly that they did what he wanted willingly. And now he's clean and sober and living a normal life. He has a job, maybe a family. He walks around like a regular person, and no one knows what he did. No one except the women he destroyed, and most of them probably can't even remember his name. That's the thing about predators. They don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they look like regular people. Sometimes they even convince themselves they're good people. But the damage they cause is real. The lives they ruin are real. And no amount of sobriety or redemption can undo what they've done. We're in the final stretch now, and I need you to comment below. Tell me what you think about these confessions. Are these people beyond redemption, or do they deserve forgiveness? Let me know, and make sure you're subscribed, because we're about to talk about a man who almost ended his own life, and the simple text message that saved him. Depression is invisible. You can be drowning right in front of people, and they'll never know. You can be planning your own death while smiling and going through the motions of normal life. And that's exactly what this man was doing. He was in his late 20s, working a job that was going nowhere, feeling like his life had no purpose or direction. Every day felt the same. Wake up, go to work, come home, repeat. He was stuck in a loop with no way out, and slowly, quietly, he started to think that maybe there was one way out, one permanent solution to a temporary problem. He didn't tell anyone what he was feeling. He kept it all inside, bottled up. He thought admitting he was struggling was a sign of weakness. He thought he had to handle it on his own, and that silence nearly killed him. One night, he got in his car and started driving with no destination in mind. He just wanted to escape, to get away from his life, from his thoughts, from everything. And eventually, he found himself at a bridge on the outskirts of town. He parked the car, turned off the engine, turned off the lights, and sat there in the darkness for 30 minutes. He doesn't know if he was really planning to jump. Maybe he was. Maybe he was just scaring himself, testing the boundaries, seeing how close he could get to the edge. But he was there, on that bridge, in the dark, and he was thinking about it. Then his phone chimed, a text message from his girlfriend, something simple and ordinary. "Are you working late? Should I make dinner?" That was it. Nothing profound, nothing poetic, just a normal question from someone who loved him, and it shattered him. He broke down crying so hard he couldn't breathe, because that simple question reminded him that someone cared. Someone was at home waiting for him. Someone wanted him to come back. And how could he have been sitting there on that bridge, thinking about leaving her behind? How could he have been so selfish? He sat there for another half hour, pulling himself together. Then he drove home. And when he walked through the door, there she was, smiling at him. Dinner on the table, pork chops and rice. And he hugged her like he had never hugged anyone before. He couldn't let go, because she had saved his life without even knowing it. Years later, they're married. They have a life together. She has bipolar disorder, and he goes with her to therapy every week. He's read countless books trying to understand what she goes through. He supports her through her darkest moments, and he's never told her about that night on the bridge. He's never told her how close he came to ending everything, because she carries enough weight already, and he doesn't want to add to her burden. But he thinks about it sometimes, about how one simple text message pulled him back from the edge, about how such a small act of love saved his life. And he wonders how many other people out there are sitting on their own bridges, waiting for a sign that someone cares. That's why he's sharing his story now, because he wants people to know that it doesn't take a grand gesture to save someone. Sometimes all it takes is a text message, a phone call, a question. "Are you okay? I'm thinking about you." "I love you." Simple words that can mean the difference between life and death. If you're struggling right now, if you're reading this and thinking about giving up, please reach out to someone, anyone. Send a text, make a call, let someone know you're not okay. Because there are people who care about you even if you can't see it right now. There are people who want you here, and your absence would leave a hole in the world that could never be filled. And if you're not struggling, reach out anyway. Check on the people you love. Ask how they're doing. Remind them that they matter. Because you never know who's sitting on a bridge in the dark, waiting for a reason to come home. We're almost at the end now. But before we get there, I need you to do something. I need you to like this video, subscribe to the channel, share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because the final confession is about a funeral with no mourners and a lie that gave a grieving son peace. This story takes place in a nursing home, a place where elderly people live out their final days, sometimes forgotten by the world, sometimes forgotten even by their own families. One of the residents was an elderly woman. No visitors, no phone calls, just her and the silence. When she died, the nursing home held a small funeral service in the chapel. They always do this for residents who pass away. It's a dignity thing, a way to acknowledge that this person existed, that their life mattered, even if no one shows up to mourn them. And usually, no one does. Usually it's just staff members sitting in the pews out of obligation. But this time, someone came. A middle-aged man in a military uniform. He was emotional, barely holding himself together. He asked the staff about his mother's final days. What was she like? Was she happy? Did she talk about him? And the staff member who greeted him realized something terrible. This woman had never mentioned having a son. She had never talked about family at all. She had lived in that nursing home for years, dying alone, and this man had no idea. He thought his mother had friends, thought she was being taken care of, thought she had some kind of life. The staff member made a decision in that moment, a decision that would haunt them forever. They lied. They told this grieving son that yes, his mother talked about him all the time. She was so proud of you. She loved you. She missed you. She wanted you to know that she forgave you for not visiting more often. None of it was true, but the son needed to hear it. He needed to believe that his mother's last years weren't spent in total isolation, that she thought about him, that she loved him, even if it was a lie. The son broke down crying, thanked the staff member over and over, asked questions about his mother's favorite foods, her hobbies, what she did during the day, and the staff member made it all up. Said she loved board games, loved the therapy dogs that visited, loved Ariana Grande music until she saw how the singer dressed. They made up a version of this woman's final years, that was kinder than the truth. A version where she was happy and loved and remembered. And the son believed every word. He made arrangements to have her cremated, said he would keep fresh flowers by her urn, promised to talk to her every day. The staff member told him one final lie as he left. "Your mother didn't blame you. Don't blame yourself." Words that could apply to anything. Words that gave this man permission to let go of whatever guilt he was carrying. Later, the pastor who had overseen the funeral confronted the staff member. "What were you thinking? What if this man meets someone who actually knew his mother? What if he finds out the truth? What if this lie destroys him?" And the staff member didn't have a good answer, because they knew what they had done was reckless, knew they had sent a ticking time bomb out into the world. But they also couldn't regret it, because in that moment, giving that man peace felt more important than telling the truth. That's the confession. A lie told to a grieving son, a fiction constructed to make his mother's death more bearable. And the person who told that lie has no idea if they did the right thing. They'll never know. They'll just have to live with the uncertainty forever. And that's it. That's the end. 10 confessions from 10 different people. 10 secrets that were never supposed to see the light of day. Betrayal and death and manipulation and lies. The worst parts of human nature laid bare for the world to see. So what do we do with this information? How do we process the fact that people are capable of such terrible things? That regular people, people who look like us and live among us, carry these kinds of secrets? I don't have an answer. All I know is that everyone has darkness inside them. Everyone has made choices they regret. Everyone has secrets they would rather die than reveal. The only difference between the people in these confessions and the rest of us is that they had the courage, or maybe the desperation, to admit what they'd done. And maybe that's the lesson here. That confession, as painful as it is the first step toward healing. That carrying secrets alone will destroy you. That speaking the truth, even when it's ugly, is better than living a lie forever. Or maybe there is no lesson. Maybe these are just stories, dark, disturbing stories about the worst moments of people's lives. Stories that remind us that we're all capable of terrible things under the right circumstances. Stories that make us grateful we haven't been tested the way these people were. Either way, thank you for watching until the end. Thank you for listening to these confessions. Thank you for bearing witness to the darkness. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel. Like this video. Leave a comment telling me which confession affected you the most. Because these stories matter. These people matter. And their confessions deserve to be heard. Until next time, remember that everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Be kind, be patient, and maybe, just maybe, reach out to someone today and remind them that they're not alone.